part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright. You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast. I am your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, the Man of Tomorrow, and with me, as always, the other half of that Superman double feature, the Superman of Red, Mr. James Cole. What's up, Man of Steel?
What's going on, Tyler? How's it going?
It's going pretty well. You know, woke up to snow this morning after, you know, that I'm officially going on spring break because for some reason school thinks to be the only high school in the district to go on spring break now while everyone else goes in April.
Yeah.
I thought they were just joking, but nope, they're serious. I'm just like, holy crap, man. Yeah, I just
I mean,
man.
we had snow up here. I mean, unfortunately, like the reality here in Northwest Ohio is we can have snow in May if it so chose, but I mean, we usually don't have too much snow past April most years.
And that's Ohio. That's just Ohio, people.
Yeah.
That's what it does to us. But yeah, I woke up this morning and I looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, my dad already messaged me. He's like, enjoying the snow? I'm like, what? What the hell are you talking about? I looked outside like, son of a gun. Because I had made the joke that as soon as we go out, because as soon as we go on spring break, the weather's going to just go to the pooper. And then as soon as we go back after spring break, watch, the weather will go dope.
Go all nice and warm again.
Yep.
Yeah, when you're stuck inside a building all day long.
Yep. And I'll just be there sitting there like, huh. But hey, we're not here to talk about Ohio's weather. No. We're here to talk about the Superman Space Age, a 3-part trade kind of event. Like, I really think they could have made this into individual issues over a year, but they did 3 books.
It could have been. It could have been, but I do kind of like the oversized issue format they used for it.
I do too. I actually, I feel like you're actually getting some like hardcore story because there's so much there. The first one, so part 3 just came out like 2 weeks ago as of this recording.
Yeah.
And book 2 was like in November and book 1 was like August or September of last year.
I thought it was supposed to be every other month, but it might have been every couple of months that it came out.
Well, it was, and then book 3 got delayed or something because it was one of those like, holy cow, because we had talked about it when it came out. We're like, we could do this now or just wait for all 3. When we realized it was only 3 parts, it's like, just wait for all 3 and do it as one story. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're just going to look at that as a whole. Before we dive in detail,
I mean, because it very much is like,
yeah, it's just one. I'm like, when this becomes a collective edition, it would be really cool, like for people to just buy it if they, they put it out in a, big collected edition.
Yeah, I have all 3, and this would be something I would like to have a collected book,
a hardback, even. Did you enjoy this story just overall?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there's some little things here and there, but for what it is and the world that it created, yeah, I thought it was actually really good.
And we'll get into it more. I find it fascinating in different aspects. Like, I remember reading the first part and being like, oh, okay. And then reading the second part, like, okay. And then waiting and then just reading the third part and being like, huh. And then I went back and reread all of it.
Well, I've only read through it once, but especially the second part, I was like, and even the first part, I was like, this is a universe that Robert Pattinson's Batman could be in.
Well, we'll get into it. But so the first book, it is written by, let me open the book here, Mark Russell. Art is Michael Spike Allred, and Laura Allred is the colorist. And I will just say this. I really love the color, and I really like the artwork.
Yes, I dig the artwork. It's very well done.
I don't know if it would be like it's the. I think the artwork works in this format. Kind of. I don't know if I'd want like an ongoing Superman series in with this, like the main title, but maybe like its own book. Like if Space Age was its own title.
I definitely read. I definitely would read an in continuity. Now, you're talking about like I'm talking about if this artist was drawing an in continuity book, I would think that would be fantastic. Now, if you try to put this story in like a ongoing,
yeah, I'm just talking about the book, like the art. Like I love the art, but to me, it feels kind of. Okay, so you know what it reminds me of? Like this whole book and this story, I'll say this. It reminds me of someone who's a big fan of New Frontier. Is how it kind of reminds me of. It's in a very similar vein style. Like the way the art is, retro, the colors pop. It's not, it's not Darwin Cook art, but it just feels like it could be its cousin. And then even the story.
Well, yeah, I mean the time period, the aesthetics, the fashion aesthetics, the building and interior design aesthetics, the character designs, the costume designs, everything's very, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and all Silver Age as well.
Oh yeah, it is definitely a Silver Age, like what'd you say, love letter or just book or?
Well, so we can kind of get into it, I guess. So the idea of this book as a whole is this is a different Earth in the multiverse, prior to Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Anti-Monitor wiping out universes.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the opening page is 1985.
Yeah, and it's actually, and it has the skies raining red. It's not exactly red skies and everything like were most common to see during Crisis, the antimatter wave and that type of stuff. But like the Earth is glowing red, and then it is raining red and stuff down on the planet.
And the story starts with you have this narration, by Superman throughout the entire book, and he's telling us the story. And we already have Lois and Superman together with John in the first page. And he says, "Dad, is everything going to be okay, right?" And he says, "No, Jonathan, it's not. And that's all right." And he says, and then it jumps to 1963 in Smallville, Kansas. And it shifts over to telling the story about Jonathan and Clark. And there's some, we've got the Jonathan Kent, Pearls of Wisdom. So, and in this where they're baling hay, right? Anyone who's ever worked on a farm will tell you baling hay sucks. Okay. And there's this thing where Jonathan says, "That's enough for today, and I'm spent." And Clark says, "I could have the rest done before you got to the porch, And Jonathan says, "Done quick or done right?" And I think that's an important statement, right? Done quick or done right. But at the same time, I think Clark / Superman could do both. He could do it quick and do it right.
Yeah.
But
Well, this is also Clark in high school, or
yeah,
maybe shortly
right after.
thereafter. But this is like this.
I picture him as like he's already graduated and he's just not sure what to do with his life.
Yeah, because at this point he does say something about he doesn't know really what to do with his life. And
He says, "Waste my life here," and his dad's like, "What, growing things?"
Yeah, which is very common, very common trope. But how he rushes headlong into the fray. What, basically the Cuban Missile Crisis or something similar?
Yeah, I mean, we get Clark and Jonathan sharing a root beer, and then Jonathan starts telling them stories about him in the war in 44.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the Arctic Ocean, but still.
And they talk about how they used the idea of like light to shoot the enemy, because the enemy were hiding in caves and they thought they were smoking cigarettes, because a lot of the soldiers would hang on to the cigarettes. And then one time they saw a flick and they just shot. It was a little boy. And he talks about the dead, the faces of the dead staying with you.
It's a very well written story. I really like and enjoy the passage of time that the story has. How it starts in 1985 with that's when Crisis is happening, and then back to 1963 with his father on the farm, with Jonathan Kent on the farm, and then Jonathan Kent back in the 40s in World War II fighting some Japanese.
Yeah. Then we have him tell about, when Clark landed and what they did, but also that there was something else that landed right behind Clark, but it kept going and they didn't know where it went. So they just followed it. They followed it out to wherever it was going, and they just let it go. They didn't follow it.
Never had any luck finding it. Yeah.
He said, "There's a part of me out there," and he says, "There's a part of all of us out there." And then the next thing we know is when Kennedy gets shot, and then we're in Washington D.C. with Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor. And we have this. Basically, we have them meeting for some sort of military, contract that they're going to have to kind of develop here. And then we're at Metropolis, and we have Jimmy Olsen. We just have Jimmy and Perry. And we're seeing that the only reporter that they have in Dallas is the woman who runs the Kooks column, who isn't, that big of a deal. And the one who's down closest to the area is Lois Lane.
Yep, closest to Texas. Yeah, I love that, how that's what she's doing. She's the Kooks and Cranks writer, but she's the only journalist that they have in the area to be able to report on it. And then of course she knocks it out of the park. But I love that they, at that time they didn't give her the chance, and
yep.
Basically she got it by there being no other choice. But it showed what she could really do.
And then, of course, Clark takes off because he feels he has to do something. Everyone who's listening, Alora is okay. She's just getting a bath and she's cranky. So have no fear. She is safe. It's okay.
Yeah.
But so we get Clark flying. He takes out a bird, and it actually starts the Russians don't want to shoot missiles, thinking the Americans are going to attack. And the Americans don't know what to do. So a fighter pilot, who you may have heard of, James. You don't know if you've heard of this guy. His name's Hal Jordan. You know this guy?
Yeah, I think I know Hal Jordan. I think he's a pretty well-known guy.
Okay, wasn't too sure. He shoots down whatever it is, and they're like, "I got him. Got what? If I told you, you'd ground me. And of course, now the threat is gone. The Russians back off. And we're back at the Lex Corp. We're learning that there's going to be a pitch between him and Wayne for the government contract. But at the last panel, Lex says, see which person you can find with the gambling debts.
Yeah, it's just a little dark, Who can I get under? Who's got something to lose?
And then we see that they come running in with copy being reported from Lois, and we see her at her typewriter. We see her doing interviews with people, and that she was actually doing her job down there. We see Bruce Wayne talking to Lucius Fox with a car. We see Dr. Savannah talking to Lex about nuclear holocaust and 5%. And then Clark is in the Arctic and finds that missing piece. And he touches it. And it says, identity confirmed of Kal-El of Krypton. And it grows. And what is it, James?
The Fortress of Solitude.
And inside's a hologram of Jor-El in his very, very early looks.
Yeah, green and yellow suit with kind of like a sun on it. And then he's got an S on his back.
I thought the S on the back was cool. I don't know if I've ever seen it or paid enough attention to previous Jor-Els in that era. But I like the S. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with the idea that Superman would maybe one day have the S on his cape.
And then what's interesting is the hologram of Jor-El, it is still just an AI program, basically says to him, that this is your home, this is your laboratory. And he says, and the day will come when you'll be called upon to help this world. Your job until then is to be ready. And he says, there's no time to waste. By now you have no doubt learned to control your heat vision. By what? You will have discovered that you possess a towering scientific intellect. I do. And most important of all, you have no doubt spent years learning all you can about this planet, taking in knowledge of its people, its cultures, and its way of life, learning from its greatest minds and leaders. As a guardian of the earth, your job is to mostly listen. Having done all of this, you are finally ready. He points to the suit. And he's like, your family seal, that you might not be the Earth's champion, but the pride of Krypton as well.
Yeah, I think it's really funny, the idea of what he maybe expected of his child coming to Earth, Isn't
that a typical father in a way, that we expect a lot from our children and don't realize that we're setting them up with high expectations?
Yeah. I mean, especially what he expects that he has done to this point. Like, it's funny, like, thinking about how old he might have been at this point and, like, what powers he does and doesn't have.
Well, he hasn't been, Smallville. Be there.
Certainly not Smallville.
He goes back home to the Kents. It's 1964. And he's... poor girl. They're packed him. Clark is leaving on the train station. His mom has packed him some sandwiches. His father got him a hat. He's got his glasses on. His mom got him a journal. And he's on his way to Metropolis to learn about being a reporter so that he can learn from people. And then we're, in the middle. And him and Lois become friends. And he takes over the Cranks and Kooks column. And, we have Jimmy Olsen taking a picture of what this lady says is a dinosaur egg, but it looks like a rock. Listen to someone talk about aliens among us. And Mr. White says, Kent, as a writer, you're a subpar, but I'll be a salty dog if you're not the fastest typist I've ever seen. And then we see him go into the Seagull next to Joe's shoe repair. And when he sits down, there's a guy he's meeting with in all green coat, black pants, got some guy liner going on.
Heavy guy liner going on.
And basically tells Clark in 20 years the world's going to end because he is pariah. And he tells him that basically, he tells him his story about, doing what he was told not to do and releasing the anti-monitor and basically kickstarting Crisis. And he says, no one can stop it, not even you. I've seen the light go out on worlds after worlds, trillions of deaths. And as my punishment for unleashing such destruction, I make myself watch. And then we go and we have the presentation. And we have Wayne Enterprises presenting their super soldier type armor with their, all-terrain vehicles. And they ask, well, how do you know this armor is going to do all this stuff that you say? And we find out that Bruce actually is the one that wore it and tested it. And you can see where the Batman aesthetic is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Luthor goes up there and pitches that, but talks about surviving and being in these bunkers and having this type of way to hide and protect ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, it's a true but also very cynical view. When's the last time the human race created a weapon and it never used?
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're jumping back to the Seagull, and Clark likes to go there and order milk, and they he keeps going back there because he's hoping the guy will show back up. And Clark and Lois go together and bond. She tells him about her dad being in the war and a story about them being told to protect this bridge, right? This is the bridge part. Yeah, they were told to protect this bridge at all costs because the Germans might overtake it. The Germans were told to protect the bridge at all costs because the Americans might overtake it. Nobody really wanted the bridge, but these two sides were killing each other over nothing.
Yeah.
So, and then what I find interesting is Clark says, "Well,
these books have a very have an idea of like the things that people do with the power that they have,
yeah,
like governments doing that, sending people to die for to kill each other for nothing, and then the idea later on that we'll get to of his people interviewing Lois interviewing Superman and asking about his power and what if he doesn't what if one day he just decides not to help and save people, instead take over.
Yeah. And the part ends where the lady what else did the guy predict, Clark? Basically, he said, well, he said something like the United States would be conquered by insects, like the termites or earwigs. I don't really remember what it's called. And she starts laughing, and as they're leaving, you hear, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles. And the Beatles are on TV playing. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
You find out that Luth.
And then we go to them voting on who they should take as the next take on the next defense contract, and a certain general is pushing for Luthor.
And we learn, yay, and all of his gambling debts are paid. And then at the end, Lex says, maybe go to the track, take the rest of the day off and go to the track or something.
Yeah.
And then we're back at, there's Mr. Wayne and Lucius Fox talking. And what I said is, so what do you want to do with all this R&D? And Bruce says, what do you mean? LexCorp won the defense contract. According to the terms of our bid, all this has to be destroyed. And Lucius says, I believe the specific term was that it was to be disposed of. Isn't that what I said? There's a reason why I had the legal team insist of this language, because a thing can be disposed of without being destroyed. It's simply taken off the books. So you may want to hold on to it. Why? Because when you don't trust the people writing history, off the books is a pretty good place to be. Love it.
Yeah. So this book is we've seen so far already now. This book is very clearly not just a Superman book. This is a DC. This is a universe, a world, a full world of all of characters and heroes and villains that this world encompasses. It's just
which I didn't.
I did not either. I did not expect it to be this way. To have Hal Jordan in it, to have Bruce in it. I of course expected Lex.
Oh yeah, and maybe Bruce would pop up or some, but I didn't expect it to be as integral as it ends up being.
Yeah, Bruce with Lucius Fox here. Later on, I know we see Commissioner Gordon, but yeah, there's a lot. There's always a lot of good. There's always a lot of good talk, a lot of good character interactions. Building, developing, setting up this story in this world.
So on the next page we have Lois getting on a train, and she's giving Clark advice about following leads. And what I like is he says, I don't know if there's a specific moment when I suddenly realized that I loved Lois, but somehow I'd always known that I couldn't live without her. Lois has been my constant reminder that whatever strength fate may have granted me, it's nothing compared to the strength I've gotten from the people in my life. So we have him studying in the fortress with his powers. He's learning the equation for transforming one into another as it follows, which is Kryptonian physics. And he keeps eyeing down the costume.
Yeah.
We see his heat vision, his helping, his X-ray vision. We see him saving wreckage from a ship. And, he's learning.
Yeah, you could have found it faster if you used your X-ray vision. Teaches him his X-ray vision. I like that he's going through training, that he's learning the things he can do. So something that we didn't really talk about is we get a lot of talk coming from Clark. This is a journal that he is writing, that he's
that his mom gave him.
Yeah, that his mom gave him, and he's writing in it. And as it goes, we learn that it's he's writing in it, or a facsimile, like he's writing for decades. I mean, he is a writer after all.
All I know is you would have more than one journal, I suppose, because I feel like there's a lot going on in his life.
Right. Look like the 7 apartment with all the composition notebooks filled out.
That's what always made me mad about John Winchester's diary. Is I'm like, he'd been keeping it and had all this stuff in it, but every time they showed that prop, did not look that full. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That thing should have been like
an encyclopedia, like this old school big binder thing that they flop down. Should have looked like the Book of Shadows from Charmed, like something big.
Yeah, exactly. So Clark asked Jarrell, what do you save the world from when the world is such a mess? My son, no one saves the world. The best you can do is help people survive it. And then we have what I love is Lois is down in the South against, at the time, during the civil rights movement and against the segregation, George Wallace. And she gets locked up. But where is it? Because they didn't have a separate cell for women, they locked her up with the men. So she's locked up with the protesting men. And it was perfect because right there is where she gets to do her interview with the leaders. And, they talk about their lunch counter sit-in at the Woolsworth. But they talked about how before that, they went and had a large meal at a Chinese restaurant because they knew that they probably wouldn't eat for a while. And then Clark shows up asking for Lois, and all the police officers are like, we ain't got no ladies here. And he uses his x-ray vision, and he sees her in there interviewing. And he's like, okay, well, of course. Thank you, gentlemen. And then later that night, something shakes the police, and somehow mysteriously, the back wall of the cell just has disappeared. And the person she was interviewing was John Lewis. Now, John Lewis is a real person. John Lewis walked with Martin Luther King. John Lewis was a senator. Yeah, well, I can't remember if it was a senator or a congressman, but he was a senator, and I think he just recently passed away. I think within the past 2 years. But pretty substantial figure. And then we have Lex pretending. That's what I love. He's, talking on a television means that he's in Hawaii going to test this atomic bomb thing that he has. And we find out that he blows up Coast City Naval Base.
That's
and that
nuts.
Lex is actually in LexCorp. He was using a painting, first green screener.
Yeah. Right.
And he tells all of his people that work for him that, that basically they're just made these bunkers to basically they're going to be a nuclear war, and we're going to survive it because we have these bunkers. He persuades them to eat the fruit because we don't know when they'll have fresh fruit again. And Dr. Silas Stone wants out, and Lex gives him a check for $1 million and says spend it quickly, because basically Lex prepared for the world to go kaboom. And then Lois shows up in Perry's office to learn about Coast City, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, his intentions are he blows up Coast City and he expects them to return fire on the Soviets, starting a nuclear war to destroy the population of the planet.
And that's, gosh, Lex is evil, but dang, dude.
I know, right?
You have Hal Jordan flying past Coast City, seeing it just demolished. You have Bruce Wayne, who's smart enough to kind of talk to, are there any warheads missing? Who has, they're all there in military custody, all except 2. And where are they? LexCorp. So, yeah, Lex is using his warheads to trick everyone. And then Bruce is retreating to the basement, to the bomb shelter that just happens to be storing some of his off-the-books attire.
Yeah. I like, though, they go, excellent, sir, shall I make some sandwiches? That's okay, Alfred. I'll get something on the road. I think that's a nod to I'll get drive-through.
Yep. The drive-through wasn't there yet.
Yeah, right?
Shall I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir? I'll get drive-through.
Yeah, I'll get drive-through.
I want to see that car in drive-through. That's all I'm going to say.
Right? If I had
And
I had a Batman Forever Batmobile, I'd drive it through a drive-through.
It just depends. If my fin might get stuck. But
Well, you have to know the height of your fin.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had a Batmobile, period, I would definitely be driving it everywhere possible. Be like, pull around, like, be like, open that top. I'll take my food, please.
That'd be dope, though.
Yeah, it would.
I'd have instant respect for the guy who drove up in a Batmobile. Guy
I
or
don't care
girl.
which one it is. It doesn't matter if you pulled up in the George Clooney one. It would suck because you'd be all by your own in an open top.
Yeah.
But I'd still be like, dope.
Yeah. That's sick.
I'd be like, awesome. But back to our story. You know, we have Clark's journal as he walks in the fortress. The world doesn't wait for you to be ready. My mistake was never in wanting to save the world before I was ready. It was thinking I could do it alone. And we see that the suit is gone. And here he comes, flying. The people who do the most good in the world are not the strongest, the smartest, the most prepared, but simply those who show up. And
I like that he finally feels ready, you know? It's like it's just that time now, you know?
It's a him thing, you know, like he had to feel it.
Which is something I like, you know? You know, that was something that was a big part of Man of Steel, and I always enjoyed that story bit, you know? Like don't do anything because it's so big. Don't do anything
just show up
until you're ready to do it.
You know, the next page is immediately Abin Sur crashing and how Jordan is there. And he says, I'm dying, and there is no time to find a replacement. You must take the ring from which our power flows. But I'm not worthy. And Abin says, no, you're not, but you are here. I thought that was really interesting. Like it backs up what Superman just said, but at the same time, like it puts that how Jordan's not, worthy, but he's there, so he's just doing the best. And then we find out that Superman is flying around, destroying all the missiles that were fired in the air. And Lex finds out that the missiles are not being deployed like he expected. The president retaliated, and there's been no missiles. And then all of a sudden, a car comes ripping through the Lex warehouse bunker. His Lex employees do have a lot of machine guns shooting it up. And then there's this dude in this suit
this armored suit.
And then Luthor has this fall guy he's setting up. Then all of a sudden, you just see Batman pull Luthor through. And we find out that General Lane was in Coast City. And there's Lois at the remains. We find Lex has been arrested. It says an investigation quickly revealed that it was Lex Luthor who destroyed Coast City. Mr. Luthor, you are hereby charged with 2 million counts of murder. And in the light of their near miss in as many years, both the United States and the Soviet Union agreed to complete nuclear disarmament. Though nobody ever did figure out what happened to the American missiles or why they never reached their target. And we see Superman with the missiles on the moon.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But most people don't look too hard at miracles. Sometimes we refer to this as the space age, other time as the nuclear age, as if we can't make up our minds. I suppose today we made our choice. Today is the day we chose to stop digging our own grave just enough to look up to the stars. And there's Clark shown back up in Kansas. while his dad's holding the Daily Planet, The Day This Became the Space Age by Lois Lane. And, they have a good heart-to-heart. And I like this. He says, it feels stupid to imagine that I can strap on a cape, fly around, and keep the shadow at bay. Well, maybe so. But then, maybe hope is just what we call the stupidity we need. All I know is I'm not worrying about anything, says Martha. And it says, 1 month later, United Nations, and we have Wonder Woman talking before them. And we find out that a wealthy benefactor, Bruce Wayne, built the Hall of Justice, a meeting place for those who wanted to fight for the planet's survival rather than its destruction. And the final page is basically Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern.
At the Hall of Justice, the Justice League of America.
So, and what I find interesting is, and we see this throughout the story, they don't know each other's secret identities.
No.
There is still like this degree of separation, but that's end of book 1.
Yup. End of book 1. It's really good. It's a very interesting.
And I recommend anyone who reads it, after you read it, wait a while, go back and read it again, because I read it as it came out and James didn't, because he was just going to wait to read it like he did. And I went back and reread all of it.
I really enjoyed reading it.
So, book 2 starts in 1972 with some hookers.
It does.
It does. And what I like is this guy, this pimp looking, Danny Trejo looking guy.
He really
is. He's got his knife. He's gonna cut this girl up, and
the guy's name is Scutch. They call him Scutch.
I mean, that just tells you, like,
yeah.
And I love Superman grabs him. He says, "Where are you taking me?" He said, New Mexico." He says, "Hey man, you can't do that. I got rights." "I know you do, and I respect that, sir. You can express those in New Mexico." So.
You can exercise them in New Mexico. Yeah, that's pretty wild, though.
I mean, I don't blame him. It's one of my favorite parts in book 2 of Michael Straczynski's Superman Earth 1 is when the dude starts beating up on the girl that's his friend that's a hooker. And he grabs him and just takes him to the Alaska or something and just drops him off and comes back.
Yeah.
Love it. Now we have Clark and Lois at the Seagull again. And he says, she asks him why they keep coming to this bar. And that's a good question, Lois. Why do we come to this bar? And she makes the joke about it's the only place that serves ice cold milk.
And at this point, we're up to 1972. He's been coming to this bar for 6 years.
And hold on. So Clark goes outside, sees an asteroid, flies up, stops an asteroid, from hitting the Earth. Big deal, right? I think it's funny because, as he comes back down, and he says, where's the quote here? "In the end, every prophet is a pariah, and people prefer the comforting lie they call hope. And who can blame them? Why would you believe any of this was coming to an end if you didn't have to?" We see him signing a lunchbox for a kid. And he brings flowers to Lois. And Lois, basically, I love this Lois. Where she's just questioning what he does and what he can do. The world doesn't need saving so much as it needs changing. And that if we're ever going to turn things around, it's going to take more than just one guy in fireproof underwear. And, he tosses his flowers to the side. And I love it. I love their dynamic. I love that Lois has a love and respect for Superman, but isn't completely infatuated with him.
Yeah, and
That's
she's
why I
not
can't-
giving him like just the benefit of the doubt. Like she's being a responsible journalist.
That's why I just can't get behind Margot Kidder's Lois Lane.
Yeah.
He doesn't age. I mean, he doesn't age as well as, say, Noel Neal.
Yeah, and that was at even a tougher time for a character like Lois Lane.
Or Phyllis Coates. Gotta throw out Phyllis.
Yeah.
Can't forget her.
The thing that gets me about this book is that Superman repeatedly says, "I just saved Earth from the Earth from an asteroid." Like he repeatedly says that to multiple people in this book, in this issue. I think it even comes up in the next issue, but it's just a little funny how he seems to focus on that one thing. Like I did this huge thing to save everybody, and like I don't know. It's like he's like he wants somebody
like,
acknowledge it. Somebody thank me. You know, somebody acknowledge that it's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious, and what we see as it goes on, and I won't go page by page, is Bruce Wayne continuing fighting crime as Batman, and he steps down as CEO of Wayne, and Maxwell Lord takes over. And what we find is, what do they decide to do? Basically, like gentrification. They're forcing people out of the slums. They're actually burning them down, driving people from their homes. And, the biggest theme in here is Bruce realizes he's a sucker, that he can't fight, crime both on the street, or crime needs to be fought both on the street and in the boardroom. By him being the head of Wayne Enterprises actually gave him a better advantage of being able to help with the crime and the problems of Gotham that he was neglecting. And we find out at the Hall of Justice, we've added Flash, Aquaman, and Green Arrow. And then I like this conversation because Superman says, I think we need to discuss why we're here. Lay down some basic principles. Things that we all agree should, and more importantly, should not be done. Wonder Woman says, well, I think not killing people is a good place to start. Heh, says Green Arrow. Wonder Woman says, what do you mean, heh? We kill people every day, simply based on those who we choose to save and not. It's like the trolley problem. Aquaman, was a trolley, but...
Yeah.
And then basically we have, a conversation between Batman, who looks more like straight up Batman now. Like he looks like Batman, not much like the armored guy we had seen before. And I like how the trunks they're more like trunks, like shorts for both him and Superman. Instead of like tidy whitey trunks.
Right.
And, Batman says, unlike you, I can't afford the luxury of time, the luxury of hope. And hope keeps coming up as like, the lie we choose to believe, the luxury. It's a theme in this. And then there you have your line from Superman. I saved the Earth from an asteroid. You're welcome.
Right.
And then Batman explains the trolley. The trolley situation is you have a trolley heading full speed towards 5 people who've been tied to the track. And the only way to stop it is to switch the track, knowing that if you do, it will kill an employee who was working on the other track. Would you do it? Trade 5 lives for 1, and the knowledge that you had a hand in the one's death? The correct answer, of course, is yes. You should flip the switch even if an innocent person dies. Not to save the 5 lives, but to deny whoever tied them to the track whatever it was they wanted, to let them know they failed. That they will always fail. Because in the long run, that's what saves lives. I suppose the purpose of the thought experiment is to make you consider what extent you're willing to play God. But if you hold the power of life and death in your hands, then you're not playing. So that's Batman. And then we find out the Flash is, learning to disable bombs because he says how many times people show up with bombs and he has to just like grab them and run away with them, but doesn't know where to go to have them defuse. So he's learning to defuse bombs.
Yeah. I think it's funny. It says just run around with a live bomb until I figure out what else to blow up. That's not a good situation for anyone. So I figured it might be helpful if I learned how to defuse a bomb or two. I just think that's funny because of, Batman. Sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yep. And I still always laugh. I made a joke to Brian about I just push people and I run away. But we don't quote that movie. And then we have the whole Watergate scandal that breaks. And Clark basically explains, him and Lois basically break it down what they were doing and what happened and everything. And he gives Lois a head start. And then we have where Clark talks about it. He says, now that I wasn't working the Watergate break-in, I had time to do some thinking. My mind kept coming back to that trolley problem. If you could save 5 people by sacrificing one, you should do it. To me, the answer seems to be no. You should try to save them all. Because even if you fail and end up sending 5 people to their death, you remain the kind of person who will do whatever it takes to save 6. The kind of person who refuses to play God, even though you have the power to. And in the end, that's what saves the most lives. I suppose that in the space age, in our area of game theory and cold mathematical analysis, operating on that kind of optimism might seem naive, hokey even. But when it all seems lost, when the cynical and corrupt are firmly in charge, isn't that when you need optimism the most? And I feel like that's a really good breakdown of the mindset of both Batman and Superman.
Absolutely.
And of course, Clark goes back home, sees his parents. How are things with you and that girl? She's 28 years old, Ma.
And not great.
And he's giving her the breakdown. And where is it? Ma says, and he's talking about how she sees through Superman and gives him something to think about. And Ma says, and that's what it sounds like you love most about her. I don't know this girl from canned peas, Clark, but I know that the one way to ever find out if someone loves you is to show them who you are. Suppose you're right, Mom. Glad we could help, says, Paul while drinking his coffee.
Glad we could help.
And I love this. When it's Superman walking with Lois and the guy says, hot dog, Superman? He says, gee, Tony, I'd love one, but I don't carry a lot of cash on me. And he says, it's on the house, Superman. Wow, thanks. And then you see kids, hey, it's Superman. Well, for one thing, there's always free hot dogs. Then Superman, flies a lady up the 6th floor to her apartment. The lady makes them some tea. And he says, the thing is, the larger purpose being that is, it makes people feel like no matter who they are, no matter how great or small their problems are, somebody cares. Excellent tea, ma'am. Then they see that she has a picture of her husband who was in the war. And, Clark says, my dad was in the war. And Lois says, mine too. And we learn about right here, we have another flashback kind of story. And it's Superman telling about when his dad was in the Pacific, when it was hit by a torpedo and every man was in the water. And Jonathan's buddy, Toby, told him that they radioed that another boat would be coming, so just hold on. And says, so his dad, hold on. He says, the next day came, but no rescue boat. But figuring the boat was merely late, my father continued to hang on. Toby died on the 3rd day. Apparently, his head wound was worse than it looked. But on the 4th day, a boat came. And then we see Jonathan yelling, like, what took you so long? You said you were going to be here 3 days ago. And the guy says, nobody radioed us, Mac. We just happened upon you by luck. Superman continues, and that's when my dad knew that Toby had been lying. But without Toby telling him that a boat was on the way, my dad never would have made it. Maybe that's why it's so important to give people hope, even when there is no good reason for it, because hope is the lie we make come true. So I think that's a big statement in just his character. Now, this is where we get a big shift in the story. On Earth 8326554Z, it's an Earth that's basically been destroyed, and the only person left on it is Superman. And we find out that he's... so he says to himself, why do I stay on a planet that's been destroyed as punishment for my failure to save them, to save my home? Why do I keep talking to myself? It is because I have no one else to talk to. Or it's because the moment I stop, the sound of speech disappears from the earth forever. Unfreaking believable. And Brainiac shows up. And they want his help to stop the Anti-Monitor, who will destroy this and every other universe he comes to. And, basically he's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And this Superman, he's talking, he says, he's right. And perhaps he left the Fortress of Solitude intact, knowing that I have enough compressed hydrogen, freeze-dried soil, and seeds to rebuild the planet. But what's the point when there's no one to rebuild it for? All right, then we're back at the Hall of Justice. Flash, still working on his bombs. We learn that Brainiac's coming. And then we have Superman. He flies out. He finds a desolate planet. And he's just, he's learning. And, he comes back and he gives basically Lois the standard, Superman interview, where he comes from, his weaknesses, and he talks about, he gives her the weaknesses of kryptonite. And she asks why, and he basically states that, with the world knowing, it gives them, they have to trust each other. It's not just them about trusting Superman. It's about Superman trusting them if they would have to go to the length to scour the entire planet to find shards.
For tiny bits of kryptonite. I like how he talks about it, though. Rocks, metal, really any matter that has been absorbing the radiation of a red sun is, well, I call it kryptonite.
This next page, one of my favorite parts. You have other reporters coming back from the White House, because their press credentials were revoked because of Lane's Watergate articles. They got blackballed, and they start going off on Lois for what she said. And Clark goes to say something, and they're like, "Butt out, Kansas." And then Clark loses his junk. He says, "No, I don't believe I will. If I've done my job half as well as Lois, I'd be the one writing those articles. And if you had half the courage she had, you'd be writing them." He goes off on all of them. Jimmy shows up in his very 70s attire. Clark, meanwhile, still has the same basic suit he left Smallville in, 10 plus years ago. And, "Is that you? Are you a coward?" He says, if you've ever seen war, you really want to know? Because cowards get platoons killed. People who freeze when bullets start flying. People who close eyes, pretend they're somewhere else while their buddy's bleeding. So, what do you think, James? So basically, Clark goes off on these guys, and we find out that Perry promotes him to the new editor because their editor had quit. And we're back in the Seagull, and Lois and Clark are having a conversation.
This time, Pariah walking by the Seagull.
Yeah, they just missed him.
Yeah.
And we find out that, is this where we find out? Hold on. No, maybe not. Maybe he's not when he called out here. Thought it was. But then basically Lois and Clark connect and they start kissing. And then Batman, Bruce Wayne, finds out that Wayne Enterprise was basically paying people to burn buildings down. Then we go on a little Batman thing here, where Bruce Wayne tricks him by appearing in the most yellowish suit possible, his own house fundraiser, then switches with Alfred, but comes out dressed as Batman with a bag over Bruce / Alfred's head, demanding they basically confess. And he says, "You took how many buildings you torched tonight, Lord? How many?" And Maxwell Lord says 2. He's like, "For every building you've taken from Gotham, I'll take one of yours." And he blows up Wayne Tower.
Yeah, which I thought was wild. I was like, wow. Like, I know Batman is like a serious dude, but like he's going almost terrorist levels.
Yeah, this is some crazy Bruce.
Yeah. It's effective. Maxwell Lord quits.
Yeah, and Bruce
He becomes CEO again.
Yeah, and it's 1974, and there's Queen, and we see Clark, buying the newspaper, and it's more Lois's Watergate stories, and she's like, "You can get those free at the office." He's like, "I know, but I can't wait. I'm just so proud of you." Then you turn the page, and they're getting married. Oh, and then I almost forgot where he says, "I've debated on telling you this because I wanted to protect you. I told myself, but the truth is I was simply afraid to say anything. But if we're going to do this, then I need to come clean. Clark, what is it?" "Lois, I am," Lois says, "Superman." "You knew, but how?" "Clark, I'm the reporter who broke Watergate." Now they're getting married.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that he didn't tell her. I like that she liked and fell in love with Clark. I like that she knew and that she waited for him. I mean, it's so many different ideas executed very well in their relationship.
And we have them in the back of the car, her kissing him, and she rips open his shirt. It's all cute. And then we're in 1975 in the fortress, and guess who just had a baby? Because there's Clark carrying the little bouncing baby boy. And they're meeting Jor-El, the holograph, and learning about Kandar that actually has people in it. And then we find out there's a disturbance in the Earth's magnetic drain. And Brainiac has come to Earth. And he's talking at the Hall of Justice. With Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Batman. Or no Batman, sorry. And, Flash is like, "Have you ever met an ant? Because let me tell you, they take threats to their home very seriously." And Brainiac's, talking trash. He talks about the Anti-Monitor. We see the Anti-Monitor with Harbinger. The destruction of planets. And basically he says, "Why?"
Destruction of universes.
And Superman says, why this parlay? Why bother telling the ants that you're about to step on them? He says, "This world's about to be destroyed. There's nothing you can do about it. But its wealth and resources can be used to save others. And isn't that what you are here to do? Here to protect Earth, not to horse trade it. But there's one resource this world has that makes it unique, worth harvesting, which is," Brainiac says, "you." And Superman says, "And the other 4 billion people on Earth, they're dead." So the Justice League basically...
they're dead already, and you get a shot of Lois and John.
Mm-hmm. You don't threaten a man's wife, his woman, and his child. About to throw it down. And then, "Just you, son of Krypton, Kal-El." And then basically they start battling Brainiac. We see the invisible jet. We see Hal Jordan going. Superman gets set by red rays. And then we get the best part ever, which is the Flash saying, "Hey man, you okay? You should stay on the ground. It's dangerous up there. You're not exactly much help, are you?" "I don't know, maybe. I mean, I did just plant a bomb or two or a whole bomb closet worth on the board his spacecraft." "When did you do that?" "While you were all jabbering in the Hall of Justice." And we see how the Flashes sped out, grabbed the bombs, went back, put them on the ship, and then the bombs go off, and a part of Brainiac's ship comes out, but when it does, it has like its metal, what do you call it, tentacle thing?
Yeah.
Just
Tentacle it uses like a spike.
Burst through Hal Jordan. And then Batman shows up in his Batmobile, finally doing something.
Well, you know, Batman's part-time.
Yeah.
He's part-time leaguer.
And
even in this universe.
And then, you know, they basically get Brainiac to a stalemate, and he leaves, but Hal Jordan does not. We find there's like a council of Brainiacs talking about the coming, you know, end, and then we're at basically at the grave of Green Lantern. They're burying him with a headstone with the Green Lantern symbol because nobody knows who each other is. And Mr. Wayne's building a new Hall of Justice. And Batman basically says, I'll see you on Monday. And Superman's talking. He says, because that's the nature of life. All we can hope to do is keep surviving to make it to the next time, to the next crisis.
Yep.
And then there's Lois and John up at the fortress.
One big happy family.
End of book 2. All right, James, this is it, man. This is the final book.
Man.
I find it interesting how dysfunctional in a way the Justice League is.
Yeah. I mean, I think it stands to reason as why it's, you know, one of the universes that is going to be destroyed at the time of the crisis. You know, why it's not one of the top worlds that saves the day.
So now this book starts. I really like, that we have this Superman that's on the Earth. We'll call it Earth Z for now because I don't want to say all those numbers. That he has, the way of telling him apart is he has the same Superman costume, but he has behind his letter shield is black compared to our main Superman being the gold yellow. So that's how we tell them apart. And, he's talking about, you have no idea what a precarious thing existence is. Precarious thing existence is. How many other Earths just like this one have already been destroyed? Whether they're by their inhabitants' own hand, alien marauders, or just dumb luck. And now we're back. It's 1982. I'm not born yet. Neither are you, James.
Nope, not born yet. And back at the Seagull, and he finally ran into Pariah again. Hasn't seen him since the 60s, and now he's wearing a green 80s sports coat. And
his makeup probably fits him better now.
Yeah.
And he says, I was beginning to think I just imagined you as a man. And then Pariah's like, a manifestation of your guilt or innocence as a bad dream. And he's basically saying the same thing, that, there's nothing you can do. And then we have the new Hall of Justice, where we have now John Stewart.
Because the last one was destroyed by Brainiac.
We have Martian Manhunter, Hawkman, Black Canary, Hawkgirl, Red Tornado, the Atom, and Swamp Thing have joined. Batman's looking even more Batman-y. And now they're talking about the multiverse and the Infinite Crisis. Lantern explained that the Anti-Monitor, a being who feeds off antimatter, was methodically drawing antimatter from each universe to create a sort of cosmic freezer. So, and then we learn about the Alpha Centauri B, where there is a large group of Brainiacs. And And they're making their stand on a certain Earth, which is Earth Z. And it's almost identical to yours, in fact, except in one minor detail, and that the universe, the human race, is extinct. How? Who knows? Probably some nuclear conflict or other. Your conflict are too petty to be worth remembering in any great detail. But feel no guilt. It's actually more surprising when this doesn't happen to an Earth. So that's pretty deep. Now Lex makes an appearance back. He's in the big house. You know, he meet his new lawyer, and he's trying to come to some agreement with the government. Now we're back on the farm shucking corn.
This just shows you how evil Lex is, though. They're talking about Lex Fashion shampoo not selling as much as it used to because people's hair is shorter. It's not long anymore. So let me see the directions. Lather, rinse, and that's it. Add the word repeat. There, I just doubled our sales. Now we can talk about something important.
I know. I mean, when you wash your hair, do you
No.
I'm like, I rinse my hair, I put shampoo in it, I lather, and I rinse it out.
I mean, if I've had a particularly dirty day, like I was digging, or I was messing with dealing with mulch, or if I had to sand down a whole bunch of crap and it was just all in my hair and everything, I mean, I might do a second rinse through, but that's because there's something there that I feel needed it.
So my thing is, it didn't say it twice, it says repeat. So when do you stop? You know what I'm saying?
Until you've washed and scrubbed all the hair from your head.
I guess. So. All right. So we got Lex, we got corn shucking, and then we have, it's like, it's an important conversation. But then I never became a corn farmer because I thought I was going to save the world or make some huge difference in people's lives. Suppose I just do what I do because it's who I am. And maybe we all do. Even if the world ends tomorrow, I'm not sure I'd do anything different because being here on the farm with you and Martha, this is what I always wanted my life to be. I know you just want to help everyone, son, but don't work so much that you forget who you are. Now get back to work. I could have had all these shucked by the time you blinked, old man. I know, but then you'd miss out on all my corn-based wisdom. And then we have Superman snowball fighting with John and Lois. And
I like that all the time with his dad. It's just, I can do all this so fast, but he just does it regular speed to spend time with his dad.
Yeah. It's true. And then the next is, I think it's interesting they live at the fortress, like they straight up live there. Okay, just throwing that out there. He gets a phone call, and they find out that, Clark wakes up. What is it? It's Dad. He's had a heart attack. He's dead, Lois. And the next one is them at the funeral of Jonathan Kent. So, and then we see.
I mean, his dad is older, grown. He's been Superman. Like, it's expected at some point that maybe, a parent will die, but that doesn't have to be a forming factor for Superman.
Right. And I like that. I like it a lot. And then we have Superman at the fortress with his Kryptonian father. He says, "This is Kryptonian medicine my son has never been used to treat other species." And then we have Superman resigning from the Justice League.
Yeah. Feeling that he needs to find another way to help people. That he can't just be a strongman.
And the Flash talks about how he started building model ships and bottles to teach himself patience. And he says, Superman says, thanks, that must have taken you a long time. No, not really. That's the 10th one I made today. Anyways, goodbye.
It must be hell to be this Flash.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he enjoys life very much as the Flash. Like,
well, I mean, the things he can complete in a single day, like, we could only wish to have more hours in the day. Like, he wishes he had less.
He just wishes he had, he has to keep himself busy and occupied because he does too much.
If he has enough to keep himself busy and occupied.
Memoirs of the Flash. He just writes the memoirs of every Justice Leaguer. But then we have Gotham 1984, and we have like some Riddler thugs. We learn there's the Penguin, and he starts, all making a database with all the Wayne security cameras. It's a foolproof
facial recognition software,
basically. So it didn't take long for me to clear the orchard of all the low-hanging fruit. But as any evolutionary biologist will tell you, that if you pick all the low-hanging fruit, the branches just get higher. And then we see a clown shows up. Can I help you, sir? Well, yes, I'm looking for the daycare. Oh, and you are? I'm the entertainment. And then next thing we know, the Joker's on the scene. Because you can't have Batman without the Joker at some point, and every point.
Yeah.
So we have Lex in court. And
trying to appeal his conviction for killing 2 million people.
Basically, he blames the government lent Lex 2 nuclear bombs. And he says, it's not my clients, the 2 nuclear bombs. The fact that one of them detonated accidentally while en route, well, what could be blamed other than government incompetence? But seeing as Mr. Luthor is already a rich man and a pillar of the community, he has agreed not to sue the state for false imprisonment. And basically, he gets off.
Yeah. And, I mean, Lex shoots the state attorney a very, very mean grimace. He's like, yeah, you better just say no, because something bad will happen.
And then Lex brushes off the idea of kryptonite. He wants to go after and acquire Wayne Industries. And that's what's happening. And then everyone's like, talking about what's ever become of Superman. But we see Superman and his father in the fortress. He says it's finished. And then basically, I'm using my laboratory at the Fortress of Solitude. I've discovered a way to analyze the quantum DNA signature of every being on Earth. It's like a precious snapshot of who you were at a specific moment in time from which we can exploit what your body will do. Meaning that if someone gives me a sample of their DNA, I can diagnose and cure every disease they have or will have. I call it Project Humanity. It says, why? You could be taking out terrorists and drug dealers. Why this? Something I've come to learn over the last 20 years is that while sometimes you've got to get rough with people you don't heal the world with violence. You heal it by healing it. And we see people in donation centers, the DNA, and him collecting it. Meanwhile, Lex is doing his thing, winning people over. But do you think Lex ever really wins anybody over? To me, I don't know. But what I love,
I mean, business-wise, sure.
I love when we have Lois and Martha in the Kent farm, and Lois looks very 80s with the one shoulder.
Right.
And she tells her, you could come live with us, at the Fortress of Solitude. Believe me when I say there's plenty of room, and the view is practically the same. My God, just miles and miles of nothing.
Right.
At my age, that's pretty much the view from everywhere. And then I like this. Just Clark and Jonathan on the porch, shucking corn. He says, I miss Grandpa. I do too. But it's impossible to shuck corn without feeling like he's somewhere near, judging me.
Right.
And then his son says, you're not going to die, right? I mean, you're immortal. He says, there's no such thing, son. Everything that had a beginning will, by definition, come to an end. The day comes for all of us when you leave behind the things you love, which is both death's tragedy and its promise. Then we see Joker with, he's got kids in a burning building, and Bruce can't get a match on the Joker's face. And we learn that he was actually just where is it?
Is he holding them for ransom?
Tabitha was his daughter, the daughter of a part-time clown. And even worse, the luck of living in the only place that a clown could afford, the tenant slum, or to be more accurate, an enormous insurance scam known to its tenants as a death trap, but to the rest of the world as Wayne Towers. So basically, in the past, an arsonist burned down the place where the Joker and his daughter lived, and he went in there to save her and got disfigured. And now that's the origin of this Joker. And Batman's going after to stop him because he's ransoming these kids. Mm-hmm. And Silas Stone is there where he traces him. Or Lucius. And basically there's dynamite in the phone booth, and it blows up. And Batman can't, he can't find him. But he shows up as Bruce Wayne. And the clown tricks him by wearing a Bruce Wayne mask. So they don't know which one's the clown and which one's the real one. I would just say, look at the gloves. But, And then,
I mean, you'd think so.
Then he burns the money. And he makes Wayne put on a clown mask. Right? Yeah. He got confused when I was reading it. And he was going to get away with it. But Bruce Wayne jumps in and gets shot, and so does the Joker, and they both die. I thought it was pretty crappy. I'm gonna be honest. The fact that Bruce Wayne gets shot by a cop at the end, and that's how he goes out, stopping the Joker like that. Like, he ain't wearing body armor. It took me a while to just kind of like let that sink in. I was like,
well, I mean, it is a different world. This isn't the Batman this isn't the Batman we're accustomed to.
No. And then there's Clark talking with Pariah again. And LexCorp basically takes over because Bruce Wayne is dead. But then there starts to be fire in the sky. And the heroes go into action for trying to protect everyone and do what they can, but there's no way of saving the world, The crisis is here. At the fortress, Jor-El disappears. And what we find out is Superman, I'm trying to figure out where it says this. Brainiac had given me coordinates for an escape portal from the universe. Should I change my mind? Should I decide to join him? Should I choose to abandon the doomed world that has become my home? Should I choose to abandon the human race and all that it's meant to me? So before I end this journal, I'd like to add a few brief notes about how you came to be reading it. In fact, someone ever does. If someone ever does. Brainiac promised to keep the portal to the other universe open long enough for one being to cross through. And if Brainiac is nothing if not reliable, nothing if not a survivor, his only mistake being the assumption that I must be too. So basically, he pushes through this giant crystal ball looking thing. And we're back on Earth Z. And Clark's talking to himself. He says, Clark, your name is Clark. Your mother is Martha. Your father is. And he catches this. And he says, it's Kryptonian technology, but how? He says, let's get it inside. And there's the journal. He says, I don't know if anyone is reading this journal, but if someone is reading it, it's probably your universe version of me. I know that your planet has been destroyed, so if you stuck around, I can only guess that hope is what kept you here. I have sent this capsule to the North Pole of your world in the belief that if you are still there, that is where you'll be. The enclosed memory crystal contains the quantum DNA signature of as many human beings as I could get from every corner of the Earth. This will allow you to recreate everyone recorded on the crystal as they were at the moment I received their DNA. I made it my life's work to save these people, to save what I could, the world that took me in. This is going to require some explanation. So basically, the first person he brings back is Lois. Then we're back at the Fortress of Solitude on the main Earth. It's back to where the book began with Clark, Lois, and Little John. And then we see that everything's being destroyed. And he says, Lois once asked me to be a hero. And I'm not sure I ever really come up with a good answer for that. What it means to be a hero. But the best one I could come up with is that a hero is someone who never thinks about how much they mean to the world, but realizes just how much the world means to them. And then we're on Earth Z, where everybody wears white jumpsuits. And there's a thing that says, in memory of a friend. And it's a statue. And it's a Superman statue. And this girl says, I don't get it. You're still here, Superman. He says, yes. I suppose I am.
What kind of maniac builds a statue of himself? That's not me.
And the part is what we all call love. I would have made the statue color so at least you could do the difference in his symbol. But that's the books, man. And I know I recommend everyone to read it because there's a lot in there. We could have dissected more and more, but
if we went into it, I mean, we could do a 3-4 hour deep dive on this story.
And it's interesting because, the one thing that I kept coming back to is, how does this Earth survive the crisis and the other Earth didn't? You know what I'm saying? Like if the anti-monitor, because think back to Infinite Crisis when they stop it, they destroy the multiverse and everything, and it restarts as one Earth. So it just kind of makes you like, whoa. I don't know. I'm not going to think too much on it, but that just was my thought. Like the first Earth was destroyed by the anti-monitor, and this one.
Well, as they spoke about the anti-monitor, they talked about kind of how he came in his own time.
So this Earth has time, I guess. Maybe it's cyclical.
Yeah, maybe something like that. That like the antimatter wave isn't just an instant that starts rushing over. Like I don't know, maybe it takes a while for him to consume an entire universe. So, like,
Yeah,
maybe there is an idea, like, there is a passage of time, but for each universe, it's different. That passage of time is fast or slow, depending on the time that universe holds. Like, the Dark Knights of Steel universe progresses much slower.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, I mean, it is a way to look at it. So, but overall, what would you rate this whole series?
Well, I rate it a recommend. You know, I recommend you pick it up and read it. I've only read it one time, so, and it actually kind of just struck me a little more here at the end. Was like, oh, that's what he did. He got it to Earth Z, and that Superman repopulated the world with the DNA of everybody from that world. It was like, but like how did all the water and minerals and like he had I guess everything to be able to do it, but there was no life to be able to recreate, and that's what he was given.
Yeah, because he says earlier on, like, he's like, I have the soil and the seeds and everything to to repopulate the earth. And he said, but there's no reason to. And then, so the whole point is with the people now having the ability to bring the people, he's like, well, might as well do it. So it's a good story. I think it's one that just you have to read and let it marinate and then go back, after a week or two or a month or so. Not too long, but go back and read it again. And I think you get more out of it because I feel like I got understanding the whole story as a whole and, reading it all at one time really helped because most of the little nuances and stuff I had forgotten just because of how spaced out it was. And then when we were going to do this, I went, and read the whole thing. So that's what I recommend to people. Any other pearls of wisdom before we get out of here, James?
No, I think I'm running a little low on them.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we should go shuck some corn together. I'm going to do that, dude. When you come visit, I'm going to go buy some corn. We're going to sit on the porch and shuck it. And when Jania's like, what are you guys doing? We're like, we're shucking corn for Pa.
Yeah.
They're just going to wear overalls, and I'll have a blue shirt on. You'll have a red shirt. And we'll sit out barefoot and be like, we're shucking corn.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, everybody. Enjoy, have a good time, and remember.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough Super Talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our information. $1 a month. You'll get extra special content that you don't get on the main show, like movie commentaries and whatever else comes out of our mouths. So check it out, patreon.com/Krypton Report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
We're going to press pause and hear a few words from our other podcasts on Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us, and then listen in.